Our modern Western culture places little to no value on the power of our nightly dreams to inspire, shift, and reorganize our lives. This podcast demands a deep reconsideration of the role dreams play on our path to a more vital and meaningful life. The following is living proof of the life-affirming power of dreams to affect a change and redirect the trajectory of our inner and outer lives. These are the dreams that shape us. Something likes to talk to us in our dreams. Something that knows us personally, that cares about what happens and takes an interest in our lives, and who we are as people, our character. It looks out for our health, as Harper's story shows in Episode 1, Season 1, when his dreams told him his heart condition was better and he could be active again. There's something in your dreams that gives you a heads up about the future, as many of our guests have attested to. It even connects us with our loved ones in the afterlife. Call it what you will: God, soul, the unconscious mind, archetypes, wish fulfillment. Something is definitely interacting with us in our dreams, and perhaps it's really many things. After 30 or so episodes of this podcast, and all the amazing stories we've chronicled, we thought we might have seen it all. We thought we might even know what that something is. But now we bring you Alaya's story, where the thing interacting with her in her dreams is her ancestors. Oh, and a goddess that's really her? Just wait till you hear this story. I'm J.M. DeBoard, and I'll be back after the show. Now here's Alaya and my co-host, Steve.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Dreams That Shape Us podcast. I'm your co-host, Steve Ernenwine. I'm here with my good friend, Alaya Danu. Really excited to have you here. We've kind of been loose friends for a long time. We finally got to meet each other this past summer in Tucson, and it was just amazing to finally meet with you. And it was really great to kind of solidify our friendship.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for the invitation. Because I remember you sending it out, and then I kind of fell off the radar, and then meeting you at the conference. It's like you were like, "Are you Alaya?" And I'm like, "Yeah." You're like, "I'm Steven," and I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" So I met a couple of people like that at the conference. Like, I've been friends with you online for a couple of years, but to actually be able to meet in person, I love that. So it was an honor and a pleasure to meet you.
Well, thank
Really.
you.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was. I was kind of like, I kind of know you, but I don't know if this is gonna be like an awkward introduction or if like we are gonna connect like right away. And it was really nice. So, yeah, I love when I've found this with so many people in the dreaming community that I've met online and known for years, and then you just like meet each other, and it's just like we've known each other forever. And,
Right.
yeah, that was
Right.
totally how I felt meeting you.
Yeah.
So yeah, here we are. We have a really incredible, beautiful, kind of epic story for you today. Alaya is going to be sharing with you a slew of dreams that really have shaped her life. They've shaped her work. They're being woven into a dissertation for a PhD that she's currently. You're not done with it, right?
No, I'm not done
Okay.
with it yet. No.
Yeah. So this encapsulates so much from. I don't know. I'm gonna butcher the heck out of this, but just know that what we're about to share with you really digs deep, and it really is special, and it shows the powerful way that our dreams really call out of us that special thing that we are here to bring into this world. So hope you enjoy this story. Do you, let's see, how do you want to begin this story?
I don't know.
Yeah. uh, I get it.
Um, okay, well, I'm gonna start with that one dream that just had me constantly be curious as to, okay, so what is it I'm supposed to do? What is it as I'm supposed to do? Because we hear that question, who are you or who am I? And it was a dream I had when I was 15. And in that dream, I remember um, going downstairs from my room. And my room at the time was in the attic, the top of the house. And my mother, she was in the bathroom and she said, "Oh, yeah, by the way, um, there was a priest that she used to speak to when she needed guidance of an African tradition that we do not follow. And so in the dream, she said, "Oh, by the way, Baba Seku said to me that it's not your path to follow Ifa, and that your path was to do something different." And so, just as a tangent, Ifa, it's the tradition of the Yoruba people of Nigeria. Okay. And that's generally when you go for a divination, it lays out, what your destiny is and
Hmm.
how to accomplish that if you so decide to fulfill it in this lifetime. So I had that dream, and of course, for the rest of my years, I'm trying to figure out, well, what if I'm not supposed to go through EFO? What am I supposed to go through? Because that was the understanding growing up. You get a
Hmm.
divination for your life path to be revealed, and then you follow through with that. So that was my understanding growing up. So we're going to fast forward maybe about 10 years later, 10, almost 15 years later, and I've been documenting my dreams, mainly the very profound ones, not the dream from yesterday was just warning me about what's going to happen today. Um, those are important too, but the ones that I've written down are existentially related. And for me, that just
Yeah.
means, purpose. What is my purpose and how that's communicated to me? So we're in 2014 now, and I'm preparing. Um, I apply to go to, 2015. I applied to go to a online MFA program, a Master's in Fine Arts, but in creative nonfiction, because I realized, I need to share my dreams, but I don't know how to do that. And so I'm
Hmm.
thinking I should get an MFA in creative nonfiction so I can, figure out a format or develop a format and publish a book or series of books. So one of the things where I know when you know you're in the flow and you know you're in the right track is from the date of applying all the way down to registering. It took 1 month, and usually it'll take a couple of months.
Yeah.
It took 1 month,
Wow.
right? And so when that happened, I was like, okay, this is this is like meant to be. Now the school is called Bay Path. I believe it's in Massachusetts. They have a brick and mortar, but this is the writing program at the time was online. And one of the beautiful things about this program is at the time you could register for a 1 week writing workshop in Ireland.
Ooh.
And I've never been to Ireland. At this point in my life, I lived in South Korea for a year. I lived in China for a year. I taught English in both places. I've never been to Europe. So I was like, "Oh, yeah, I would love to go to Ireland." I've had a couple of magical dreams about Ireland.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll have more. And I wasn't thinking of anything else other than being at a writing workshop. Like, this is what most professional writers do. They go to different places and they do writing workshops.
Hmm.
So I register for that summer. So I apply in like March, I think. And then by that summer, I'm on a plane to go do a writing workshop in Ireland.
Wow.
Um, and the fascinating thing about this is that I bought a one-way ticket. However, I I had decided, let me spend, at least 60 days in Ireland, and then use financial aid, the rest of my financial aid, to come back and figure out my home situation, because the home situation was a little toxic, which is why I went off on a one-way ticket. I was maybe hoping to be rejuvenated
Yeah.
enough to come back and deal with what was going on. So I get to Ireland, and all of that went out the window. I spend 2 weeks in Tralee, which is maybe about a 45-minute drive from Dingle, which is, oh my goodness, it's beautiful. It's like at the western point of Europe. Like, it just on the coast, beautiful
Man.
skies, the air, ah, magic.
Yeah, I've been wanting to go to Ireland so bad, so this is like,
Yes,
please let me
yes, I
go.
highly recommend it. So I get there, I spend 2 weeks in Tralee, and the ancestors start talking. And I'm like, oh yeah, I do have Irish ancestry, so it would make sense.
Hmm.
Um, but it's, little tidbits here and there, like for me to look up certain words of the language, or being welcomed by the land. And that's a big thing for me. If I'm
Yeah.
not welcomed by the land, I know I'm not going to sleep well. So finally, I get to the workshop. I spend the whole week there, and then I start couch surfing, or doing work away. And with work away, it's an exchange. Um, you provide like cleaning services, or you help out at an establishment in exchange for room and board, and that gives you the opportunity to be a tourist
Nice.
without breaking the bank. So that's what I did. Eventually, 1 month turned to 2 months. Ireland, I don't know if the visa requirements are still the same, but they give you 90 days as a US citizen.
Wow.
And so the right before it ended, my visa ended, I had 5 days left. The woman that was hosting me, like, I had an adventure with her as well. Like, she bore witness firsthand to the way dreams work and operate in my life. At first,
Wow.
she was really skeptical, and but she wanted to help out, because she was like, "Oh, I'm trying to grow as a person. I just started talking to a medium, and he's helping me. So maybe my experience with you would help me grow." And it did. And so she was just like, "Well, I can't help you beyond the 90 days. So you're gonna have to find a way to go." And so I did what was most natural for me. I prayed, and I reached out to my ancestors, and I said, "Look," and these were just general ancestors. I didn't have a very specific prayer at the time, and I just said, "Look, help me to understand what my next stop is and how to get there, because I don't have enough money for an airplane ticket yet to
Yeah.
get back to the US, and it's very toxic back at home, where home was at the time."
Hmm.
Sure enough, that night, I have a dream about my stepfather and my mother. They were arguing. I was sleeping in the room, but the room door was open, and she was saying to him, she was like, "You have to help her. It's not right. You cannot not help her." And so he said, "Fine, I will help her." And then he left $7, I think it was, like a $5 bill and two singles, on the headboard. And so I woke up, and I was like, maybe I should reach out to him. So I reached out to him, and he said, "Yeah, I've got family in England."
Wow.
Why don't you reach out to them? They'll, see if they can help out. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So I arranged,
Wow.
like a 1 week stay in London with a step aunt, and then the rest of my stay in Booton, which is, a parish out in the countryside. And my hostess in Ireland, she gave me the money to buy a ticket, to
Wow.
get from Ireland to Wales and onward. And so that was my journey. By the time my visa would come to an end, no matter where I was, the dream would reveal where to go to next, or I would sit in deep meditation, and that would be like an hour of sitting in meditation, and that answer would be revealed. So, Bhutan, this is my first stop in England, and this is where I had the dreams of the Gayatri Mantra and the Vedas. So I'm in a cottage with one of my aunts, a step aunts, and I think she's at work. She teaches at East Anglia University, and I'm not doing research on the Vedas or anything related to India at this time. I'm trying to do my writing homework assignments in this writing program that I'm in, and I'm struggling because the professors want me to write in a very specific way, and my creativity is like going against the grain. And so the the dreams come through, and I'm saying to myself, why am I dreaming about India? And
Hmm.
it's like, okay, I know I have Indian ancestry as well, but still.
Wow.
Like I need help with this writing situation, not, and so having those two dreams, first with the Vedas, it's, when you're in a room and the room is the universe flowing through it, and it speaks to you and it says you are dreaming the Vedas. The first thing that comes to mind is, okay, I know you're not talking about the Vedas, in India. You're talking about knowledge,
Hmm.
right? So it's me waking up and looking back at my dream journals and saying, okay, it's becoming a little more clearer now. These dreams are important. They really are,
Yeah.
you know. And of course, I wasn't thinking about the reestablishment of the lineage, which I'll get to in a bit. But just to hear them say that, and just to recall sitting down with like my dream journal spread out all around me, because yes, I traveled with them.
Of
I
course.
Well, yeah, I wasn't sure
Yeah.
when I was going to come back to the US, so that was the main thing. One of the main things I traveled with. So I'm sitting with them, and they're all around me, and just going back, and I'm in awe. I'm amazed. And I find that entry that I spoke about at the very beginning of, not being initiated, and how it came up again in 2011. And
Mm.
that also gave me a little bit of a pause. And it's like, okay, well, what's that related to? There was a revelation in a dream in 2008 where the cosmic mother, or you can call her the goddess if you'd like, but I'd like to say the cosmic mother because she doesn't have a male counterpart. Um,
Mm.
she speaks and she says, you are here to create something new, right? New in this day and age, but not new in essence, if that makes sense. Because, like they
Wow.
say, there's nothing new underneath the sun. Um, and so connecting those three together for me was a moment, just one moment, just one moment, because the next comes, the dreams about Hatshepsut. So seeing that, it just renewed my belief in really listening to the dreams and not listening to the people around me.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, a little hurtful that they're not really supportive, but then on the other hand, it's like, well, you can't make them see. They're not having the same experience as you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I can totally
Uh,
relate to that. I feel like
so
a lot of people on this kind of path run into that where we look like we're diving into something that's so far outside of most people's like point of view or like train of thought. I don't know the word I'm looking for here, but that it's like, oh, maybe you should be trying to do something a little bit more grounded in like
in the real
real
world,
life. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, I've had a family member say to me, dreams dreams are not real.
Oh, I
And
hate
you
that.
and you and you have to do things in the real world. And hearing that hurt,
Hmm.
because it's something that has nourished me. It still nourishes me. I still refer back to them because it's, sacred text, sacred scripture in a sense. That really helped me to understand why I'm here and how to navigate being here. And so, to hear them say that at that time, it was just like, oh my gosh, like there is no me without the dream. There is
I
no me without the
know.
dreams. I can't do anything. So, um, the dreams with Hatshepsut, that for me also came as a surprise because, like I said, I was struggling with my writing classes at that time. And I think it was right around the time I decided to take a leave of absence. Um, and so when I have conflict in my life, I'm always expecting a solution in my dreams. And maybe, maybe these dreams were the solutions all this time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the dream with Hatshepsut is very near and dear to me. I'm actually going to um, be dividing my time between doing my dissertation and writing a book about
Wow.
Hatshepsut, but from the perspective of my ancestral dreams.
Wow.
Yeah,
Can you,
because
in case somebody doesn't know who she is,
Hatshepsut,
can
yeah.
you?
So Hatshepsut is an 18th dynasty pharaoh, and the word pharaoh is a Greek term for the Kemetic term, which is Perah, which means great house. And what that symbolized is that this person was imbued in the very elementary way of explaining it, is that this person was an emanation of the divine. And depending upon what city you were born in Kemet in ancient Egypt at this time, you were considered an emanation of the main deity, right?
Mhm.
Now there are a lot on the continent alone of Africa, and you have this in some of the mythologies of ancient India as well. There are a lot of stories of ancestry being um, charted back to a divinity. And so pretty much families are descendants of these divine beings, right? So it's pretty normal if you're raised in a cultural household that understands these beliefs, but it's
Mhm.
something that's like a ooh ah
Yeah.
wow, that's amazing type of thing if you don't have that cultural background.
Yeah.
So Hatshepsut was born in a family of four, I believe. She was the youngest, and she was the only girl. She's the only daughter of Tutmos the first, and all of her brothers died, and um, she was eventually like the last heir. And I believe it was like a half brother from one of his second wives or lesser wives that she was betrothed to. But since she was older and she was already in a priestly role as a priestess, in a priestesshood that her great great grandmothers, all the mothers before her, um, were a part of, she was regent, to use the English term. There is no such term in ancient Egypt.
Mhm.
Just for listeners that are not aware. So she, for them, pretty much, she became the next ruler, and she developed building programs. I mean, she rebuilt temples. She built new temples. She dedicated her reign to bringing balance back into Egypt. And she had a peaceful reign. She really did.
Wow.
I didn't, and here's the thing: I didn't know anything about Hatshepsut.
Yeah.
So me telling this is from the research that I have done and that I'm still doing. And I'm still doing it because there's still information being relayed to me okay, be it in waking state or in dream state. And what surprises me the most is the information that comes while I'm in waking state. Because, I'm not thinking about, oh, I need to get in touch with Hatshepsut. I'm just,
Right.
I'm, in front of my altar trying to say a prayer for someone or preparing myself as an oracle because somebody asked for an oracle reading. And then there's whispers from the ancestors, oh, do this, do that, or there's a word. And I'm like, does this word even exist? Lo and behold, it does.
Yeah.
So I'm in London 2015, 2016, and I remember having this dream, and this woman comes to me and she's like, I am Hatshepsut, and this is, she says, this is, I was worthy of being a pharaoh. And then she just recounts. She gives me
Wow.
a summation of her life. And the most phenomenal thing about this experience is that in the dream, it's like I'm speaking, but it's her.
Oh,
And
wow.
then so it's like I'm her, but then it's like I feel myself being moved out of her. And I'm like sort of like behind hovering, hovering
Hmm.
behind her as she's speaking and then pulled back into her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Um, and
Wow.
so, I get up and I write this down, and then I'm like, okay, well, does this person even exist? And yes, this person exists. Okay, great. And so there was a country that she traveled to that started with a P. And I'm saying I remember in my dream, I'm like, it can't be Persia. Persia came later. So what other what other
Hmm.
ancient civilization or location could have existed? I don't know, but I'm gonna look that up. It's Punt. And so I'm like, yes, I'm glad I didn't put Persia inside my journal because that would
Yeah.
have been really, really weird. So I write all this down and I'm doing research. And what's so disheartening about the research is that you have all of these Western scholars that know nothing about the practices during that time, projecting what they feel
Right.
they understood the Pharaonic dynasty to be. Right. And so a lot of the information I have found, and still am finding, is she usurped the throne or she took it away because she was a woman.
Yeah. Of course.
Right. And so it's like, well, there is no document that says you have to be a male, right? When you really look at the Greek word pharaoh, which means para, it means great house. You are a vessel. You are a great vessel for this spark of divinity,
Mm.
right? And there are a lot of indigenous beliefs where you're already born with that. You
Yeah.
are already born with that. Now it's your purpose in life to fulfill why you came to the earth. And so with Hatshepsut, there are some people that are like, no, she was well within her birthright. And others are like, no, she stole it. And so in some of the research I found, there's this one quote that I love. And she says, those of you that look upon what I've done, ask not why I've done it. That's me paraphrasing. And so when I read that
Wow.
from a paper that was presented at a conference on, uh, Egypt, ancient Egyptian archaeology, when I read that, I was like, yes. For me, it just felt like that was a marker, that she left behind so that
Yeah.
I could find it,
For sure.
right? And then the priest that helped her, Senenmut, he's also quoted with saying, I have access to all of the documents of the past, so I am aware of what happened at the beginning. So for the two of them to work together, for me, that just validates she knew what she was doing. She was well within her right.
Hmm.
Okay. And the way that she presented herself was well within the bounds of her taking her birthright, of her stepping into her birthright, I should say, because she didn't take anything. She just stepped into it. And she has on her one, like the red chapel, um, that was dismembered, of course. Um, her conception, a lot of researchers say, oh, she made it up. You really can't say that because dreams and oracles were a thing, right?
Yeah.
They were a thing back then. And then, she's also quoted with saying, "Oh, Amun came and spoke to me, and this is what he said." Why would she make that up? Just because she's a woman, right? You weren't there at the distant past. It's all conjecture coming from you.
Yeah, for sure.
So, from my perspective, just having this dream and all of the other dreams I've had before that, that didn't bear mention to her name, but that I can actually put parallel to a lot of what she did and say, "Oh my goodness, okay.
Wow.
Maybe I've been dreaming." You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
wow, okay. A lot of these past dreams are now making a lot more sense after having done my research. I would say, no, what she has done is well within the rights for her to do. And the main thing about Ma'at in as a concept of balance is that she did what she was supposed to do. Therefore, the country was at peace. Things
Mm,
prospered. She was blessed because she did what she was supposed to do. And then, of course, it went into decline because somebody thought it was a good idea to try and erase her memory. But what they failed to take into account is that consciousness cannot be destroyed.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that is one of the most profound and near and dear dream experiences I have, because we're talking about a figure that is documented, and you still have researchers arguing about the validity of what she did, as if they know everything there is to know about the distant past. um,
Wow.
and so, yeah, for me, it's just like that she has a very special place in my heart and in my path, because I don't get that often. It's not often that I'll something like that will happen. But it is often that I'll have a lot of past references to things that are happening today, and I encounter people, and first they're like, "I don't believe you," and then I show them the dreams, and they're like, "Oh my goodness."
oh, oh man,
So
that's funny.
yeah.
Wow, that's I think that's really really special. I think yeah, I don't know. That's really wild. I don't know if I've ever had anything quite like that. I did have this will go kind of hand in hand with something we had said in email with each other that you're like, well, I don't know why London would have, you know, brought these dreams out of me like that. Uh, but when I went back to San Antonio, which is where I was born, uh, this was in 2015. It's the first time I'd been back since I was 13 months old. And because we moved away when I was just over a year old and never went back. I had just kind of felt like there was a huge part of where I came from and who I was that I had no idea about. I had kind of this hole in my story of didn't
Hmm.
know where I came from, which is such a part of my story. Like belonging is like such a big part of my journey. Uh, that going back there when I was, I think, let's see, I would have been 29. I was almost 30, and I'm like, I really hope that going back there, I feel some kind of homecoming. That it just feels bigger or more special than I can anticipate right now. I don't
Hmm.
want to like set the pedestal too high here, but I'm hoping that I'll feel like I recapture something when I go there. And I totally did. I mean, San Antonio, I don't know if you've ever been to San Antonio, but it's such a incredibly charming city. It's got this little river walk that goes through the heart of downtown, and it's just really, really cute. Um, but anyways, while I was there on the river walk, there was this statue of Saint Anthony, which is who San Antonio is named after. Uh, and I was just staring at this statue, and I'm like, God, it seems like really intense, and had this really intense experience being in the presence of that statue. And I had a dream that night of Saint Anthony, and never looked him in the face, but he walked. It was kind of like this drum circle, and he walks around, and he's giving blessings to everybody at the circle. And the only reason why I know it's him is because he looks kind of like a friar. He's got like the brown like robe and hood and
Mhm.
that kind of thing. And so I never actually look him in the face, which I think is makes it more powerful or more like, I don't know. If I actually looked him in the face, then I think maybe it wouldn't seem as sacred. Um, so he gets to me, and then I hold out my hands, and he places this little wooden snake in my hands, and he says, "You are to bring the people back to." And he says a word, and I wake up, and I cannot remember the word for the life of me. And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, oh my god, what do you mean? Like, don't you can't do that to me. But it felt so
Yeah.
incredibly special, and I literally sat with that dream for a long time, and I didn't like try to like just vulture it apart, and I didn't even do any associations really with the snake until last fall. I actually finally really realized like what that actually all meant, and so that would have been, let's see, that would have been 20, that would have been 6 years. I sat with that dream and it didn't like fully come to me. So I was like, well, I'm not gonna just try to force a meaning upon this dream. And yeah, I like associated with it. And in Texas, they had these little wooden snake toys for kids,
Mhm.
and they kind of like, if you hold the tail and you wiggle it, it kind of whines like a snake. And my father had bought me one of those when I was a kid after we had moved from Texas, and he had told me that it was from San Antonio. And it, when I thought about that association with it, I was like, oh my god, like that toy was so special to me because it linked me to where I came from. And so I was like, I am to bring the people back to this connection to where they came from, or like
There you
where they
go.
belong, or their like sense of belonging. And it's so expansive when I like think about like all of the ways in which that means to me. But yeah, that to me feels not quite similar to that, but just having like a really holy figure that is, I don't even really know that much about Saint Anthony, and to
Mhm.
have him like show up in such a powerful way the first time I come back to San Antonio was incredibly special. And I looked up who he is the patron saint of that morning after I woke up from that dream, and he's the patron saint of lost things, and not necessarily in the way of like
Oh,
material things, but in the way of like spiritual things. Like, and I'm like, oh my god, like that's that's like, god,
that's really
that's
poignant.
so
That's
much a
really,
point of like what my
yeah.
whole spiritual journey has been about. Is so yeah, that dream to me is a very special dream in that same way of feeling really touched and really uh yeah, just really touched by the sacred in that way of having that deep connection with something that, up until that dream, like you didn't really have that relationship there. And now it like, you're like, oh my god, I never even knew like I needed this relationship. Like I love it.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's awesome.
Okay. Yeah, that's I love that when you're being given information and then all of a sudden that last word
I
that would
know.
sum it all up, you forget it and for the life of you, you're trying to grasp, what was it? Give me an association and it doesn't come right away, until after some time or even maybe you haven't reached a point reached a point in your life where it'll come back. But yeah, I've had those experiences too, and it's just like, no, no,
I know.
don't
Those
do
always
that.
like I mean, they're frustrating in the moment, but once it all clicks into place, you're like, how is there like such perfect design to how and when these connections that we make happen? Because I don't know if it's the same for you, but it's kind of like what you were saying earlier when you're like, I'm looking back at all my journals and everything's like all of a sudden making sense. Like to have those moments where you're like, I've been giving breadcrumbs like this entire time, and now it's all culminating into this perfect moment for me where I'm like, oh my god, like
Right.
this is so orchestrated and so beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And what I'm appreciating now, that I did not experience back at that time is that if they were to give to me like the name of my tradition right from the get-go, I would be holding on to that name instead of learning what that meant,
Right.
instead of living what it
Exactly.
meant. And so every little bit of breadcrumb sustained me to the next one,
Exactly.
and so I'm deeply appreciative of their teaching method. I can't say I always agree with it. However, I
Oh.
appreciate it, and I see its value because I know myself well enough,
Well,
you
it's
know?
it leaves so much room for you to discover it on kind of your own accord. Like for me to discover that, for for me to, I think I wasn't supposed to remember that last little tidbit because I needed, if he just gave it to me, maybe it wouldn't have hit as hard as like when 6 years down the road and this whole journey that happened after that, because there was a lot that happened right after that that better informed what that was that he was trying to tell me.
Mhm.
And so, man, like to not be given that and to have to kind of discover it on my own, but to have that nugget to hold on to and be like, it's there. And if I can hold the space for this to grow into what it needs to be, or for it to reveal itself in the way that it's meant to reveal itself, it's gonna it'll it's gonna reveal itself eventually.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Yeah,
Eventually, it
yeah,
it will it will be
which can be
revealed.
maddening, no doubt.
In particular when you're surrounded by people that don't share the same experiences as you,
Yeah,
because there's this expectation that you live and do in the ways that they do, right?
right.
And because in a sense they'll say, "Well, how is that fair?" And then you're like, "Well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to ignore it?" Right?
Right.
And for me, it goes back to purpose. Why are you here? Why am I here? Why is it important? Like, what is the value of this relationship with Hatshepsut? Like, what is it? What am I doing with it now? How does that add value? What's the
Hmm.
point and purpose, right? It goes back to the lineage thing. So, what is the lineage? How is she connected to that? How is any of what I've experienced connected to that? And so it requires the deep investigation. What is a lineage? Within what context? What is it connected to? What is it connected to today that I can make relatable associations so that I can better understand? Is it an assimilation that I'm doing, or is it really truly creating something new? Right.
Yeah, so if we can get everybody up to speed with this, I believe you said that you were told was it in meditation or was it in a dream that you are to reestablish the lineage?
In a dream, and followed up in meditation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
And
so,
so you're seeing all these ancestral forces. Am I understanding this right? Where it's like,
yes.
how do all these work together? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yes.
Okay.
So and these ancestral beings, they would come either as like a form of a tree, and the tree would have the face of a woman on it, or feminine forms that are faceless, and their shapes, their bodies are the cosmos. It's the cosmos in a female form. Um, or I'm going through a dream sequence and I just hear the voice, and it's a female voice, and it's constantly reestablish the lineage. If you have to understand this concept if you're going to be the head of the lineage, and it's like, well, what
Mm.
lineage are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right? What is that connected to? How do I investigate this so that I can better understand it? And it's only recently, within the last year, this is October, right? So from last October down to this October, where it's been completely clear, super clear. Now I get it. Now I
Mm.
know how to connect it. Now I know what living culture today has an ancestral connection to the Nile Valley. And it's like, that's so amazing. I didn't know that was the case, right? And how all of the countries that I visited, I can verify through DNA analysis. Oh yeah, I've have ancestry in all these places. Human
Wow.
migration. Yes, of course they traveled here and there, and of course they're transmitting this because consciousness doesn't see boundaries and borders.
Right.
So, with regards to reestablishing a lineage and how listening to, Hatshepsut's information and the connection to that, it's understanding what the legacy was in the distant past.
Mm.
You know, what did Hatshepsut do? What were some of the things that she established that are relevant in my process today? And what is the living cultures that or culture that is similar in structure? And how can you research that? And the main culture with regards to the, foundation, that would be the Akans. Now the Akans, they're a group. They're not, it's not like, you know, they're spread throughout of Western Africa. They have different clans within the Akans. So it's not, the Akan is not just one homogenous group, just to be clear. And the story that is related, that has the relation and connection, comes through the story of the seven sisters. We've heard it in the Greek stories, right? Of the
Mm.
Pleiades. You hear it in the Aboriginal stories of the Australians. Um, and of course, in India, the Kritikas, the wives of the seven sages. They can just be the seven sisters of by themselves. They don't have to be the wives of anyone. Um, so the story is the original seven families, branch families, emerged from, the old woman, the old ancestress mother. And these seven sisters, created families from within themselves. So you have the seven original branch families. Now there are hundreds in different emanations.
Mhm.
Um, how I made that connection was when I went into ceremony a couple of years ago, the seven mothers came to me and started telling me stories of my connection to them. And I'm like, what now?
Wow.
Like, how do I connect this? But you know what I mean?
Mhm.
We're not taught how we're interconnected. We're taught how we're separate.
Right.
So in having this visionary experience, and then some of the dreams that follow, and then finding out of my Akan ancestry, and then finding out their story, and then finding out how they're connected to the Nile Valley, it's like, oh, so this lineage has a lot to do with how the divine incarnates itself, right?
Mm.
How an aspect of the divine incarnates and provides information, and
Wow.
how she passes down that information through her progeny. That is the story. And if you really look
Wow.
at the Akan culture, it's the queen mother. She's an emanation of the divine, and she puts her son, the king, on the stool, right? And so that is their practice now. There's a branch family in particular that has their stories of their origins being in the Nile Valley. And if you look at the older dynastic, the pre-dynastic traditions, it's similar, very similar. Okay. So that for me, it's not saying reestablish the pharaonic dynasty on earth. No. Yeah, it has nothing to do with that. It's reestablish the connection, reestablish your family, reestablish the legacy. Here here are the teachings. Here's
Wow.
the knowledge and information to help those reconnect, because a lot of people were disconnected from their culture. Okay,
Yeah.
just one word: colonialism has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Sure, that's the biggest one. But of course, the warring tribesmen, warring kinsmen throughout. But it's just that a huge displacement has caused a disruption of lineages that were important. Okay, so
Hmm.
if you really look deeply at the philosophy and the nourishment of this knowledge, that is what's needing to be reestablished,
Wow.
not status, status and buildings and all that stuff. These temples that were built in the distant past, they served as anchors for the divine to be on earth. And the divine energy was supposed to help facilitate growth and evolution of the human spirit. And
Wow.
so that's what I see as my purpose, is reestablishing that process of anchoring the divine to help nourish and evolve.
Wow. That's incredibly beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
feel like my mind just went woo.
Well, I will tell you and everyone else, it's not as easy. It's not easy.
Oh no.
No, just doing dream work in and of itself, people say it's a luxury, and it's sad that it's said that way, but that's what's said. You know,
Yeah.
dream work is very important. It's so very important. Lineages aside, it's it brings clarity, it brings nourishment, it brings support, creativity, which is nourishing. It
Hmm.
it helps you to see which you would have otherwise overlooked. Dreams are very important. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Something you just said that I want to kind of circle back to real quick, but it just
Mhm.
like really uh, rocked me in such a way. I don't think I've ever felt this feeling before, but uh, you said something along the lines of we've been taught how we're separated, but
Yeah.
we're not taught how we're connected. And I'm like, oh my god, like I've never actually like felt into that. That like really just rocked me hard and made me realize like I don't know, maybe as a white male, I try to be really sensitive to uh, my privilege, I
Mhm.
suppose, is the best way to put that.
Mhm.
And I'm constantly feeling, I mean, not that I personally feel separated from other people and cultures because I feel like I make a very honest attempt to have a very deep relationship with many different types of people. But there's always this feeling like, am I actually accepted? You know,
Mm.
am I always gonna have to feel like I'm the bad guy in the room? If
Mm.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it
So like
does.
that what you just said just like really broke that broke that whole experience for me like kind of apart and being like you have this story in your head, you know, that you're separate,
Yeah.
you know, as a white man from everyone else, that you're kind of the bad guy, but really you need to teach yourself how to look at how you're connected with everybody. I don't know if that makes
Yeah.
any sense,
It
but
it makes absolute perfect
yeah.
sense. And as someone with mixed ancestry, for me it's all of my ancestral divinities, and I would say some of the ancestors. When you look at the human ancestors that have yet to transcend, continue their ascension to a higher realm spiritually. I guess you could say their lower level aspects haven't fully evolved.
Hmm.
There is still some conflict, but it's more of a, I mean, there is, because I've either gone into ceremony and I would see that and I would say, no, 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 none of that here. Go
Hmm.
away, go to the light, get healed, reincarnate and learn that lesson.
Yeah.
But for the higher, the ancestors that have evolved, the ancestors that are ascended, and the divinities, they don't argue. There's no border. There's
Right.
no, oh, you stay over there because you're Nordic. I mean,
Right.
you stay over there because you're from the oceanic peoples. No, that's not what it's like on the other side. There is no such thing. Like I'll have ancestors from the realm of India, so to speak, right? And from, back at, ancient Kemet, like they'll come together at the same time and talk. And it's like, wait, what? Or they won't even look anything like African or Indian. They're just beings. They're
Yeah.
cosmic beings, and they take a shape or form that will help me to better understand what I'm encountering. They look nothing like the pictures that, people write.
Right.
They look like beings that I can't even put shape or form to because that's what they are in essence, just these beautiful and big fields of energy.
I
And
love that.
so when we get here, that's where you get all the separation
Yeah.
and the discord and the anxiety. And it's like, for someone that sees herself reflected everywhere, it's like, I don't want you to be nervous just because I look the way I do. Don't be nervous. Like I don't want you to feel like you have to be constantly reminded just because I'm in your presence of the horrors of that has happened to all aspects of humanity, right?
Right.
I get it. I see it. I'm aware of it. But what are you here to do? And are you aware of these things? But what are you here to do? And how are you doing it?
Right.
Right? And like, how are you honoring that process? How are you honoring everybody's voice, your voice included? Right? So the because I've been told in readings by, priests or priestesses or whatever, I would say, "Oh, should I just focus on, a very particular demographic?" And they would say, "No, you work for spirit. You're
Yeah.
here for spirit. You're not here for the separation stuff because there's no separation on the other side." And that for me was just like a huge sigh of relief. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah. I
want
like that.
people that I interact with, I want them to know, you know, be at ease. I'm not here on this worldly nonsense. I'm here from something very, very old, very, very different, non-familiar. And I would just like to open your mind up to it and tell you that you are supported in your process. Just know how to navigate the spaces that you're in, you know, and don't feel bad about honoring your voice. Just be mindful and aware of all the things that have happened.
Mhm.
Be
Yeah.
mindful of it, but you must honor your voice. You must honor why you're here. That's so very important.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's nice.
You're welcome. I've come across a lot of people of, you're predominantly European descent, and it's always been, you know, the anxiety driven experience. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's not good for your body.
Yeah. I know.
So yeah, I just kind of wanted to speak a little bit to that.
No, I appreciate that. Where do you want to pick up your story from there?
So we have the main foundational piece of the overarching why. This is why you're here. Reestablish this lineage. You have to embody it and live it. And here are these past life, memories and past associations that will help you to better understand. And I would love to jump to the presentation I did at the conference, not specifically the presentation. However, when you have these experiences, how do you embody them, right? How do
Hmm.
you integrate them?
Right.
And what do you do when you're taught a practice, a traditional practice that looks similar to practices that, exist today? And how do you make your case to tell people, no, that's not what I'm doing. And how do you stand your ground with it, really?
Right. Yeah.
So there's the overall full on, this is the tradition. And then here's the very special traditional practice. And that's, it's an ancient, it's a dance. It's a very somewhat difficult, but very beautiful dance practice. And the name of it didn't come until recently, which is great because I had some hangups about calling it neoclassical Odissi fusion. Because Odissi, or neoclassical Odissi, is a classical dance of India. However, what I was taught in my dreams, it's only related in movement vocabulary. So some of the movements look the same, some of them are similar, they're not executed the exact same way. And the philosophy that created the dance, the origin of the dance, is very different.
Hmm.
Very different. So the name that they gave to me is the Apsu Rasa, which is the essence of water or the way of water.
Wow.
And I was taught this dance, gosh, I mean, since I was little. Like my mother, she would say that, I would just get up like as a 3-year-old, go in front of her altar and start dancing. And she would ask, she's like, "What are you doing?" And I would babble that, I have to do the dance. And she's like, "Okay, I'm going to put you in the dance class because this is
Yeah.
something that needs to be cultivated."
Yeah.
But as I got older, it would always be a female divinity. This old woman, this big, voluptuous, round woman, she would just come and she would say, "Follow me, child," or, "Make sure you put bells around your ankles." And she would do a simple footstep. And I would say, "That's it?" you know, and then she would disappear for ages. And then I would have these apsaras that would just come. And I'm like, "Ooh, this has got to be Indian." Like, just the apsaras are coming in. But why are they coming in? This was before I knew of my Indian ancestry.
Uh-huh.
And so they started coming in and they would show me a movement or they would give me a philosophy, like, the mythology, the origin of a movement. So they would say, "This is why this movement is important." Or if you
Wow.
wish to move water, you have to understand water. And it's like, can I actually move water, or is this like a philosophical thing?
Wow.
And so I remember 2014, I was out of work and I ended up with my mom, and she was preparing for an interview for like a contract. And so I was staying with her and I was with her dog, her 2 dogs. And she she wasn't at the hotel room, but there was this one morning where a female voice whispered in my ear, "Mahadi." And of course I wake up and I'm like, "Well, my mom's not here, so she wouldn't say that, but what is a Mahadi?" I don't know what that is. Okay, so I asked Google, "What's a Mahadi?"
Yeah.
Sure enough, Mahadi is the name of the sacred temple dancer in Orisha, Odisha.
Wow.
And so the sacred temple dancers in all of India, they're called Devadasis. And each region has their, own specific name. And Odisha, they called them Mahadis. Now, the Mahadi tradition was a dance tradition that was passed down from mother to adopted daughter, right?
Wow.
Another female transmission of a tradition. So when I started looking and I was like, "Oh my goodness, is this the dance that they were teaching me this whole time?" So of course I get excited
Yeah.
because, finally at this point, I have an understanding. You know, they gave me the origin of the dance and movement like back in 2008. And I had just, finished graduating from undergrad, and I was trying to find my way in New York City. Um, so 2014, they're like, Mahadi. And I'm like, oh, what is this? And I find out what
Hmm.
it is. And so it's like, this is why none of the other dance classes that I went to never really resonated, because it wasn't anywhere near related to this.
Right.
And so I started looking online, looking for basics. What are the basics? Um, and it was difficult for me to learn the steps and the movements because I wasn't sure if I was doing it right.
Hmm.
And so when we finally make our way back to New York, I decide to take a trial class at Navatman. And the Odyssey teacher at the time was Priyadarshini Banerjee. I still take classes with her from time to time, just, basic to keep up on the basics as a way of trying to maintain a practice when I don't do my own practice.
Hmm.
And I remember for her trial class, she didn't believe that that was my first dance class. And she got offended. Because, it's a trial class for those that have never taken a class. And I was like, this is my first real life class. This is not my first class in essence.
Yeah.
And she was like, I've been teaching for 15 years. I don't believe you.
Yeah.
And so I said to her, I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to print out all of the dreams that have to do with the dance, right? And what I was taught in my dreams. And I will show them to you just to prove to you that I'm not lying, because this is not something I would lie about. Sure enough, the following week, I decided to be a volunteer at the organization because I wasn't working at the time. And, for each hour of volunteering, you get, for each volunteer shift, you get a free class. And
Nice.
so I hand her, I think it was a 3 or 4 page document. And I said, here are all the dreams. And then she took it home to read. And the following week, she gave him back, and she said, "Very interesting."
Yeah.
She's like, "So you were a Mahadi in your past life?" And I was like, "I don't know. I can't." At the time, I was like, I can't say that I was or wasn't. I'm just telling you that I was taught, the essence and some movements, some like movement vocabulary, but I was taught the nuances and how to do the movements in my dreams."
Hmm.
Um, And so now she tells everybody, "Oh, Alaya was a Mahadi in her past life," and I'm like, "You have to stop doing that because
Yeah.
I haven't I haven't had a dream like up to this point. I'm like, I haven't had a dream that has confirmed that.
Right.
However, this year, after the conference, I right before I woke up, I had I relived a memory of being in a temple. Like
Wow.
I was the head dancer in that temple, and I was, doing the daily rounds, making sure the altars were, cleaned and the offerings were there. I had just finished my dance practice, and this woman came to the temple to pull me out because I was to be married into a wealthy family as a means to bring prosperity to the family.
Wow.
And I remember, feeling disheartened about it, but then at the same time was like, it's part of my duty, to bring
Mm.
prosperity to a space or sacred space, right? And so when I woke up, I was like, oh yeah, I was a Devidasi in a past life.
Wow.
And so that's just another example of how these dreams, they're not normal lucid dreams. I like to refer to them as ancestral dreams
Hmm.
because, they most of them come from ancestral divinities, and some of them I'm now seeing as I go back and review my dream journals. They are memories. They are
Wow.
legit memories, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is a
Yeah.
total memory.
Wow.
And so I'll be including, reincarnation and past lives in my dissertation because um, the ways in which I am doing my investigation, my research, I'm finding that, oh, this is a past life memory. This is totally a past life memory. um, how does it connect? Right.
Yeah.
So that's part of the work. And I am excited by it. It's what animates me. It really is to be able to talk about it like at, ISD conferences, things like this, podcasts and interviews like this. Um, and also as a means to develop a library of knowledge, literature for those behind me, right? For those
Right.
coming in, be them children that are being born, and then 20 years later, they're like, oh my goodness, I need some information on what I'm experiencing, right? Or those that
Right.
are, just coming out of high school or a career or a life change, and they're wanting to know where to look for that information. That's also why I'm doing what I'm doing, not just for me, it's for them as well.
Yeah, it's being of service for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think if we can ring this bell again, it seems like you weren't given the dream that you confirmed that you were what was the term, Mahari?
A Mahadi, yeah,
Mahadi.
Devadasi, yeah,
Yeah, that you were given that way later,
yeah.
so maybe that it didn't like go to your head. Like I like the fact that you were like, you got to stop telling people that. Um, Part of me is like, I'd probably feel the same way because I don't want people to think I have this big diluted sense of who I am. Um, yeah, I,
No,
I,
absolutely.
I don't know. I feel like personally that if this were my dream, that's probably why it came way later. Once I had fully established myself in it, knew kind of exactly why these were coming to me, and uh,
Right.
just as a big confirmation after it all, I think. And I personally, I wish I would have been able to make it to your presentation at the conference because you were literally in the time slot right before my own, and I
Mm,
was like freaking out. I was like trying to like warm up my voice because I was going to be performing songs from dreams that I'd written,
mhm.
and I'm like running down the hall trying to like do my vocal warm ups, and I would run down and I would sneak a peek into what you were doing, and then I'm like, oh, I gotta go run and grab this and get this set up, and I came back and
Yeah. I know. It's like part of me wants to reach out to the conference committee and be like, "Can you like not can you not, you know, if this person is doing something, don't put them at the same time that I'm doing
I
something because
know.
I actually want to go." Um, but that's that that was one of, I think this past conference was was probably the highlight of my presentation, of any type of presentation that I've done with ISD, because I've talked a lot about dreams and how they influence, right?
Hmm.
And the theories and the tools and methods that I do to help understand what I'm experiencing. And that's good and all when you're having a conversation. It's a completely different thing when people see it,
Right.
right? When they experience it firsthand. And the room was mostly full.
Yeah.
It was a decently filled space, and there were people in the doorway, and I was just like,
I
"Okay."
was one of them.
I was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna talk about the dance part, and I hope that people will get that this is not a somatic experience of my dreams. It's being taught a tradition in the dreams."
Yeah.
Very like two different things.
Right. Yeah.
And,
Exactly.
and just to hear people come up to me afterwards, even after the presentation, they were just like, "You are the temple. Like, you create the space. Like, you create it wherever you go." And that's been something that I've had to really learn, and that I'm still learning. And
Hmm.
that's something I want people to understand. Just because you have all this information doesn't mean you're an expert at it. It just means, I'm remembering. Like, I'm remembering who and what I was in past lives and how they're connected to what I'm doing right now. And I'm only remembering the past lives that are relevant. That's
Right.
another thing, right? So to hear people share their experience of what I shared, it's like I feel validated in the sense of, okay, I'm not wasting my time
Right.
because I can totally do this for myself and just, keep my head in the book and do my PhD and that's it. But there's so much more to it than that, because
Right.
then that's where I've met people where I met a woman where she's just such her experiences are very similar. She has a mixed race background, and she's like, how do you deal with, you want to work with just this ancestry, but another ancestry is coming up. I'm like, you can't pick and choose. You don't get to pick and choose. You don't pick and choose. You give whoever is speaking your undivided attention.
Wow.
You copy it down and you start integrating it, because they're not going to tell you the next thing until they know you've learned the lesson. And when
Mm,
you've learned why and the how, and you've put that into practice, they'll give you the next bit of information. That's how it works.
yeah, for sure.
That is how it works. And, I get it. And like I said, I love it, but I don't always agree with it, because I know myself. I know myself really well. Like, you tell me when I'm a teenager, oh, you were a sacred temple dancer in a past life. Of course, I'm going to grow up thinking, oh, yeah, I know my past life.
Right. Right.
I did these things. You have to treat me in a certain way. Where's the humility? You have to be
Exactly.
humble,
Yeah.
because you let it get to your head in that way, and it just spells so much more trouble than you need to even deal with.
Yeah, I
So,
think that's one of the most beautiful aspects of dreaming is that uh, it doesn't just show, it really does kind of force you to kind of what we've been saying here all night, kind of forces you to go on this journey with them, where it just slowly over time reveals more and more of it to you. And I think that does develop humility because kind of what we've also said, like we don't always agree with it. It's super frustrating sometimes to like in my case, like for 6 years to go by before I realized what this little nugget of insight is of what I'm supposed to bring the people to. Like these kind of things, I mean, 6 years, that's a lot of life that happens.
yeah,
Uh
it is.
like it totally, yeah, it just forces you to go on this really epic journey of self-discovery, and it doesn't let you off easy. But it also doesn't, it's not a punishing thing. It definitely gives you everything you need as you need it. And it's almost like as soon as you're just about frustrated, it's like, we better give him something,
Yeah.
something more. we,
Yes.
uh,
Yes. Yes, that happens. And
yeah.
when I catch myself getting frustrated and things are happening, I say, okay, y'all got to give me something. You have to give me
Hmm.
something because
Right.
look at what's happening. I'm
Right.
trying all sorts of different things and it's not working. And I don't like it. You're up in a lofty plane doing your own thing, checking in from time to time. You don't have to worry about a whole bunch of stuff, but I
Right.
do. And so I need more. I need it. Where do I go to from here? And how do I move forward? And sure enough, they're like, oh yeah, yeah. Oh wait, we're overdue. We're overdue. Woo, we're overdue. No,
Uh,
everything in divine timing, but
yeah.
still, yeah, that's the humor we kind of have because it is a difficult but also rewarding journey. On the note of humility, I think it was 3 weeks ago. This is before I resigned from my job as a fifth grade teacher, a fifth grade writing teacher.
Hmm.
Um, I loved it, mind you. It's just, full time work. experience as a teacher and a full-time PhD student do
Oh
not go
yeah.
hand in hand. They really don't. They no, they really don't. And then you're moving in the
No.
process. So I had to give that up. And so one of my students, she she had asked, she came up to me. She said, "So your ancestors speak to you in your dreams?" And I said, "Yeah." And she was like, "Well, what do they say?" And I'm like, "Well, they say a
Yeah.
lot of things."
Yeah.
And she was like,
How
can
much
you
time do you got?
yeah, she was like, "Can you share some of it?" And I looked at her and I said, "Are you asking me these questions or are your parents asking you these questions?" And she
Hmm.
said, "Both." She said, "Both." I said, "Okay. When do you have study hall?" And I think it's a 20-minute period where they get to do homework or study. And so she told me when, and I approached the teacher and I said, "Can I come in and, sit with these two students because they wanted to know?" And she said, "Yeah, sure." And so I go home and I'm saying to myself, I'm just going to let the ancestors decide because I've got so
Yeah.
many dream journals and we only got 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I take one of the earliest dream journals and I take it to school the following day. And so, I go to the classroom and I say, well, I'm just going to read, I'm going to read this one and then I'll talk a little bit about that. And so this dream was back in 2008, I believe. And in that dream, I am at a party. It's like a going away party. Um, I'm leaving a job. And there are these names. There are 7 names on the plate, on the tray with the plates. So I go, my name is there. So I go and I take up, my plate and I go eat and I come back for seconds, but I'm not sure if I can have seconds. And as I'm looking, there is this regal woman on the other side. She has on this white dress. She's got these gold armbands, these gold bracelets. Her hair is, not an afro puff, but she has a lot of hair and it's like wavy and it's flowing down past the shoulders.
Hmm.
Her eyes are like the most beautiful golden brown color that I've been praying for my eyes to turn out to be. And I immediately know that she's a Nubian queen. And she looks at
Uh,
me and she says, "Have you eaten?" And I say, "Yes, I have." And she said, "Good. Make sure you eat." And I just knew that she was an ancestor and that she
mhm.
was there to ensure that I am nourishing myself, that I am nourished. And so I read that dream. And one of my students, she goes, "Oh, your highness." And I said, "No, no, 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 no. Please
Mhm.
don't." I said, "Please don't, address me as that. Yes, I have this in my family, but that doesn't mean I need to walk around and behave like that. It means I need to understand what this connection is and why it's important for my life today. Why do I need
Mhm.
to remember that I have, royalty in my bloodline? Like, why is that important? What's the spiritual significance? What's the, you know, how does that help me understand why I was born? What's my purpose?" And of course, this is me trying to explain to a fifth grader,
Yeah.
so that they can get it. So I read a couple of more. I read the Vedas, the Vedas one, and they're from India. Their parents are from India, so of course they get that. They're like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
know the Vedas." And so I'm like, "Well, it's not the Vedas, it's knowledge. It just means my dreams are knowledge." And so they get so animated and they're asking all these questions and I'm saying to myself, "This is what I want to do." Right?
Yeah.
Like I want to inspire girls to understand that they are divine because in the West you're not taught that.
Right.
Women are not divine at all. And so and I want them to connect to the beauty of their culture because every culture has a downside to it, especially when it comes to women. And so I felt so at home just doing what I call dream weaving. So it's sharing a dream, and then the storytelling part is sharing how that's impacted my life.
Yeah.
right? And then how them trying to remember their dreams can actually help them in their later lives. And they asked that question. They said, sometimes I remember my dreams, sometimes I don't. What are some ways that I can remember them? And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
This is so
Nice.
awesome. So, and then of course, when I told them I was leaving, because the school didn't want me to say anything yet. And one of the administrators, she was like, "No, you need to tell them."
Yeah, I know.
Oh, and I love her for that. And that and these 2 ended up being 3 girls. These 3 girls, I was subbing their class. Their class was the last class that I was subbing, and so I told them. And the student that had asked me about the dreams in the first place, she started crying.
Oh.
Like, sobbing, crying, and I was just like, "Oh my goodness. No, this is not what I intended." Um, However, I value that experience,
Yeah.
and I value my reaction to my student that was, like, bowing her head. I was like, "Oh, no, no, no. Don't do that.
Yeah, right.
Don't call me that. Please don't do that." Um,
That'll go straight to my head, and all of a sudden,
and then I'll get in
uh,
trouble for it.
yeah.
Um, so but it
Yeah,
was
then the
so.
ancestors will really have something to say, right?
Oh, yes. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, they will not. They won't hold back. It's like they'll just drop into the room
Uh,
and let me hear it,
all
and it's
right.
the scariest thing ever. So I fear the
Uh,
descent of spirit that than anything else. Like, I'm not afraid of anything else, but when they come down to scold me, no,
yeah.
I don't. It's happened twice, and so it's like, I no, 3rd time doesn't need to be a charm. I don't need that, you know?
All
But
right.
yeah, it was one of those experiences where it was just like a reminder, this is what I wanna do. Like, I want to be able to talk more to people, especially young girls that have this pull, but don't know how to nourish it. So it's just
Yeah,
so many things I wanna do, but how do I do it?
I
How do I do
know.
it?
I really love this idea of dream weaving and the way that you're talking about it with telling the stories and then, or telling the dreams and then sharing your stories. I mean, that's so much of why we do this podcast. Uh,
Mhm.
and it's also the presentation that I did at the conference in Tucson this summer was I shared the dreams and the process of writing the songs,
Mhm.
and then I performed the song. And sharing the dreams and telling the whole process and what it meant for me and how it worked me and the way that the process brought the little nugget that the dream gave me into this thing, and then being able to perform it was so powerful and so beautiful. And man, I just about everybody in the room had wet eyes by the time the performance was
Aw.
done. It was I was so grateful for that because I was I was on the verge of being the only person in there crying.
Aw.
Um, but yeah, it meant so much to have that, and this was such a highlight moment for me in my creative life, being able to perform these dream inspired songs to an audience full of dreamers. That was like so incredibly special.
Right.
And yeah, just the reception of it, just so fully received, and the things that people had to say about it afterwards, kind of like what you were saying, were just like so deeply affirming to me and in
Mhm.
what I and how I am bringing my dreams, embodying my dreams in my own way.
Mhm.
uh yeah, it was unlike anything. I feel like it fortified something inside of me so concretely that week that, oh man, I'm like all in since then. It like,
Yeah.
oh man.
That's the highlight,
And I think
that
there
was
is
the
really
highlight.
something really powerful with sharing stories surrounding dreams, because they really are so interwovenly connected to our deepest selves. And when we are able to share the dream itself, and then consequentially how that went to work in our lives, I think it really opens so many avenues of possibilities for people who aren't experiencing that.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, I don't know, maybe I'm just partial because I've been doing this for 17 years, but I don't know how you hear these kind of stories and like not crave that in your life, where it's like, wow, Alaya has been so guided and so intimately and deeply touched by these dreams, by the way that these ancestral forces are coming to her. They've opened this whole path for her in life and have been calling out of her this beautiful, incredibly, I would think, somewhat daunting task in this. And man, like, what is it within me that my dreams would try to call out of me? That's, I'm hoping that if anybody is listening to this, that
Yeah.
if you're not on this dream work path, if this is something brand new to you that you're just stumbling upon right now, like, I want to put that in your lap. Like, what is it within me that my dreams would try to call out of me? It's so incredible to see your journey with this, how expansive it is, how intense that call is, that
Mm-hmm.
it's it's asking of you. Um, and part of me, like when I had seen some of the dreams that you had sent me, I'm like had a tinge of jealousy. Like, God, that dream is so cool. Like, I wish I had a
Oh,
dream like that. But then I'm like, yeah, but I'm sure if you gave her like a few of your really potent dreams, she would probably like be like, damn, that's actually a really cool dream. Um, I'm like, you can't sit there and like you can't judge uh in that way. Like,
yeah.
you, Steve, I know they're your dreams, so they don't maybe seem as mysterious or as intense at this point because you've sat with them for so long. But I'm like, you have plenty of dreams that I think most people would be like, holy shit, if I had a dream like that, that would be pretty wild. Um,
Yeah. I've gotten a lot of, well, what do you do with it? Right. And
mm.
I mean, now it's like, well, I'm supposed to be reestablishing this legacy. And they're like, well, what is it? And it's like, okay, so we're talking about reestablishing um, a way of life, right? A tradition. And so, yes, mainly myself and whatever children I bring forth. However, I'm not the only one looking for, ways to establish something, but what is it grounded on? What is the foundation, right?
Mm.
What is the belief system that is in alignment with what I already believe that will help nourish me? And I don't see it out there. Okay. And so one of the biggest things of this ancestral pilgrimage was when I was in Nepal. And I went during monsoon season. And so that means a lot of, yes, rain, but a lot of lightning and thunder. And I love thunder, don't get me wrong. It's just that when you're trying to sleep through the night and all you hear is thunder, um, and then thunder is such a potent force, and that the times between 12 and 4 a.m. is when, the spirits are really talking. You don't get any sleep because the mothers are speaking through that. And
Wow.
so I remember hearing it's a mother goddess tradition. And I was just like, what? You're not going to catch me calling it a mother goddess tradition. Are you serious? Do you know people have this reaction about goddess spirituality? Why would I call it a mother goddess tradition?
Yeah.
So that's my, of course I'm going to write it down.
Yeah.
But at this point, now I get it. It's not the same as a goddess spirituality. it really isn't, right? It's a tradition that is grounded in an autogenic divinity that contains both the concept of female and male, right? Because when you look at women that conceive and give birth, they give birth to both female and male,
Right.
right? So an autogenic divinity that brings forth life, and then the progeny from that creates parthenogenetically.
Wow.
What is the tradition within that? What are the practices? What are the beliefs? And where does that show up? It showed up in the dynastic Egyptians and the pre-dynastic. It has shown up in the Akan beliefs. See how that's all connected? It's
Wow.
a reestablishment of a way of life. So in knowing that now, it's like, woohoo, okay, great. Now I see why women's spirituality in the Western sense really didn't kick it for me. Now I see why goddess spirituality just didn't do it for me, because that's not what I'm operating on.
Wow.
And so now that I know that that's what that is, when I look at Hatshepsut's life, I look at it from within this perspective, from within this paradigm. When I look at the Akan belief system, I'm looking at it from within an autogenic, creative, generative force, right? I'm not looking at it from a patriarchal or patrilineal perspective. I'm not looking
Hmm.
at it from a feminist perspective. I'm looking at it from the way in which it was taught to me.
Wow.
So every dream that I've had, every memory that I've had, I look at it from this particular mother goddess tradition, the autogenic divinity that self-created and then parthenogenetically creates her progeny. And so what is that? What does that mean? How does that get transmitted? How is knowledge transmitted? How does that work? That's what my dissertation is on. So at
Wow.
this point, it's like, yeah, I totally get it. It's just doing it. And
Yeah.
now it's just doing it and supporting myself in the process. But that is the thing. This is what I incarnated for. And here's the kicker. It's like I look at several dreams and it's like you didn't have to come back. It's like I would have a dream where everybody's in class. Everybody's going to class and they're like, "Oh, did you do the assignment?" And it's like, "No, I didn't." And they're like, "Oh, that was an important assignment." It's like, "Yeah, I didn't have to do it." And then I get up to walk out and the teacher is like, "No, you can't leave." But then an administrator speaks and says she can leave. She doesn't have to be there. And so
Huh.
I've had a handful of dreams like that. And so it's like, okay, well, I as I go back and I look more and more as being is clear. Okay, this is what I agreed to come back to do, to help people remember, and in particular to help women anchor themselves in something that's nourishing for them, right? Because if you
Wow.
have traditions today that are female centered but are still not as nourishing, and there are women that are looking for something older. I'm not saying I have the answer, but I can share my experience that will help them get to their answer.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yes, I am here to reestablish the whole mother goddess tradition concepts, and how dreams are a separate realm of consciousness that we tap into when our bodies are asleep. And that there are the way that knowledge is transmitted is through the blood, through dreams, and the way it's integrated is an embodiment practice. And you have to be one with your body. You cannot be separate from it. Not at all. And I'm not basing this off of, a feminist perspective. Not to say feminism is bad. I, there's plenty of good in it, but that's just not where I'm coming from. And
Right.
I need to be clear that when you look at women's spirituality and goddess spirituality, it was a part of the women's movement in the West,
Hmm.
which is very particular to white women that did not consider everyone else. And then you have feminism of different, emanations, but still missing what I need.
Right.
So that is why, that's not my forte, and that's just where I stand. Um, so when it comes to me being able to say, what's the lineage I'm here to reestablish? What's my purpose? It's a mother goddess tradition. It's a way of life. There's a whole cosmology and a mythology and rituals and practices that are passed down. It's a thing, right? And you don't have to look a certain way to have a tradition rooted in the cosmic mother. You just have to be connected to your matrilineal, um, your mother line, your matrilineal foremothers, so that,
Hmm.
their divinities can communicate with you as well. So that is, it's a thing. It's a big thing.
Wow.
Um, but I love it. Like I'm here for it. Like I'm really passionate about
Yeah.
it. I can't think about and doing anything else, which is why I can't keep a job. I can't keep a job for
Uh,
the life of me. So I want this to be my job. You know what I mean? So
for
it's,
sure.
my PhD, which is writing about this, and then trying to figure out how else to integrate all of that, which I'm working on. But that's the main thing. People, because people ask, "What do you do?" Like, "Oh, okay, so how do you how do you make
Yeah.
your money?" At one point, I'm doing deliveries. Next thing you know, I'm teaching, and then I'm no longer teaching. And they're like, "Well, that was short lived." And I'm like, "Well, you know what? When you have these forces constantly knocking at your door, and you have to integrate the information. If you're the head of the lineage, you have a really big responsibility.
Yeah, I'm just really marveling at your whole story. I think the way you understand uh, exactly what this is asking of you right now at this point, I'm
Mhm,
sure it's going to develop even more as time goes on.
right.
I think it's absolutely fascinating, and it's funny. Like as you've been talking, I'm like thinking back on like social posts that I remember seeing of you over the last few years,
Mhm.
where you're just like, I just had this like moment where this thing happened, and I don't remember the specifics about them, but I'm like remembering all these like big moments that I remember you putting up there on on like Facebook or something.
Mhm.
Um, so it's like really, I don't know, that's so wild,
It's
and
in those big moments, I do try to share a bit just so that people can get a sense. It's totally random. It's not,
mhm,
it's not planned. I don't have my ancestral dreams on a content calendar.
yeah,
They come when they're ready to reveal it. And if it's a big thing, it's like, hey, y'all, I just had this big thing happen.
yeah,
Um, and then it'll be quiet for a while. I won't post anything, or I won't post anything relevant, and then something else will come up. And so that's how it's been. And the key takeaway is really understanding it, doing the work to integrate it before knowing the why. It's
yeah,
they're like, this is the how, get it done. And it's like, okay. And then once, I come to an understanding, or I've understood why I needed to remember this detail, then they'll say, oh, this is what it's called, or this is what it's referring to. And it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna run around with a big head with this one. I'm just gonna say thank you
yeah,
and keep it moving.
right, exactly.
Hmm.
Oh man, well, thank you absolutely so much for sharing all of this. It really, oh man, I've been like we said earlier, I've been trying to get you on here for a while now, and I'm so glad that it finally worked out. And
Yes.
oh man,
Thank you for the invitation, and everything in right timing. Because if we'd have done it, when you first put out the invite, it wouldn't have been as awesome, I think, as it is
yeah,
now. Like, so I'm glad it was a matter of timing.
yeah, because I can't remember when I actually initially asked you, but it was probably pretty early into us doing this. at the end of this year, it will be 2 years that we've been doing this already, which is crazy that it's. And
Congrats, by the way.
what's that?
That's a congrats, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been amazing. It's been a really amazing thing to be able to showcase people's dreams like this, and it's a big passion of Jason and I's to do our part, and exactly what you've been talking about here, of really showing people that now your dreams absolutely have immense value for, and these stories that we dive into them so fully. This is the deal. I mean, everybody that comes on here has these impressive stories of how dreams have deeply shaped their lives going forward, and it's a beautiful thing. It's really beautiful. So thank you for sharing yours. Oh man.
Hmm. Yeah,
I can't wait
it
till
was.
Jason hears this. I was like, "Do you remember
Oh.
Alaya?" Like, I totally introduced you to, and he's like, yeah, can't forget her." I was like,
Oh, I would love to hear his
uh,
response. Like, just like what if he can just record your facial expression as you're listening. And send it to Steven and send it to
uh,
me in a DM. It was July 24th that I reached out to you, 2021, and that you
okay,
responded in July 26th, 2 days later. And then, I kind of disappeared.
yeah, it's that's how it goes. I mean,
It's all
yeah, I
good.
mean, this is perfect timing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, oh gosh, like I said, I could go on and on.
I know.
Um, Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, and we will be in touch soon.
Wow, what an interview. Steve and I extend our thanks and gratitude to Alaya Danu. Alaya, you gave us one of the all-time most interesting stories about dream life. And I think that you gave us all so much more to think about and to wonder about and to wish for in our own dream lives. Your footsteps are leaving a trail to follow for reconnecting with our traditions and bringing the best of the past into the present and bringing the best of ourselves into it too. Godspeed to you and your work. Happy holidays, everyone. This will be the December episode, and we know that Christmas is coming up real soon here. We hope that you enjoy it and that you take every opportunity to reconnect with your loved ones and with yourself. This is the time of year when we dream a lot, when we sleep a lot. Of course, that's if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, where the nights are longer and the days are shorter. We're watching this podcast grow and grow. We're watching the numbers go up steadily. And we want to thank you for helping us to do that. And maybe give you a little Christmas reminder that the best gift that you could give to us is to tell your friends about it and leave a review at your favorite podcasting site. I'm J.M. DeBoard, and for my co-host Steve Ernenwine, we want to wish you nighty night!